Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our hashtag segment for that. Let's bring in our next guest. That's going to be Megan Brantley. She's the Vice President of Research at Likefolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, and happy Friday to every Amazon investor over the last 52 weeks. The stock's up about 54%. Megan, when you look at this, you know, this isn't about AWS or e-commerce or advertising. It's about all of it together. And the last couple of earnings reports kind of supports this narrative that Amazon should be doing well because all segments within their business continue to outperform. Do you have the data that backs that up?
You know, yeah, we do. Whenever we look at Amazon, I will say we put Amazon in an elite grouping of stocks among the company, the likes of Tesla. You know how bullish we have consistently been on Tesla. And so for us to add Amazon in this group, I think speaks to a really high level of confidence and a lot of the metrics that we're seeing. And when we look at this, you kind of alluded to this, there are three areas of Amazon where we have some special insight because these are pretty consumer facing. We can look at its e-commerce platform, its Prime offerings and those subscriptions. We can look at advertising and how well its Prime Video is doing and how those visits to its advertising sites look. And we can also look at its cloud, whether we see that growing, how it looks in terms of overall market share versus rising competitors. And we see two very flashing green lights, and I would say maybe one yellow light whenever we're looking at Amazon, especially ahead of earnings next week. Let's start with the yellow light. Let's get the kind of the bad news out of the way first. And you can see on this chart, we have a bit of a slowdown when we look at AWS versus, say, Microsoft Azure versus Google's cloud platform. And what we learned from Microsoft yesterday, and you can see that this is kind of corresponded on that chart, is Microsoft reported a bit of a slowdown in its cloud growth, up by about 31% year over year versus 33% in the prior quarter. So we expect a bit of a slowdown in AWS's growth. I don't think that this is necessarily unexpected. We've seen a bit of a slowdown before, but this is still the massive leader in this space. So Amazon is still head and shoulders above competition. However, growth is slowing there, so something that investors should be aware of. But whenever we look at other areas, specifically its e-commerce platform, its Prime offering, and also its advertising growth potential, we see a lot of opportunity there. Whenever we look at e-commerce, we see that Amazon had a really, really nice Christmas. I know that we've been on talking with you guys over the past couple of weeks, over the past month, and we said this is one of our names to watch because the web visits to its Prime site look incredible. And you can see that on the chart here, that massive jump over the holiday season. And what's really nice, though, is when we look at this from a year-over-year growth perspective, we actually have an acceleration just in the last month. So we saw e-commerce visits up by about 20%. Now we have those up by about 22%. So we see that engagement as being sticky. And so I think that that's a really nice tailwind that Amazon has, that it's engaging these consumers and it's able to kind of defend that Prime subscription and keep providing value to consumers. So all in all, the only thing that we haven't hit on is its advertising growth potential. And I think live sports is the real kicker there. Whenever we look at that, we see Amazon, I think last quarter, it reported about 14 billion in ad sales, which is tremendous. But whenever you compare it versus a Meta, who just reported just north of 46 billion in ad sales, you see the potential there and you see kind of what they're chasing. And so I think for us, when we look at this stock near all-time highs, we're still bullish heading into next week.
You know, Megan, I don't know if I know of a company whose business segments are so on the cutting edge of everything that Americans are doing right now, right? It's e-commerce, pointing and clicking to shop. It's cloud, right, and which they're the leader at, which it's easy to attack the leader in cloud, but they're the leader in cloud. And then it's streaming and the strength of Amazon Prime. And you mentioned the key going forward for them, and that is live television. They're getting into football. They're getting better at it. Live sports is probably on the horizon for them more and more. That'll deal another blow to linear TV. But here's what surprised me. In the history of watching Amazon stock, investors, traders don't like when they spend money. And the news today of them spending 60% more on these 2 Mississippi data centers, and the stock is up $5 on more spending. That's counterintuitive to the way that this stock has traded the last few months, Megan. So are we now expecting more spending and expecting everything that's going on? Digital advertising is only going to get more for them. You mentioned how far they are behind like a Meta platforms. That's only going to get better, Megan.
Yeah, I think that this is an area that we continue to see companies like Meta, like Amazon saying, okay, we spent a tremendous amount on CapEx in 2024. We're going to spend more in 2025. And I think that Andy Jassy talked about it on its last earnings call, that they see this as a once in a lifetime opportunity, and that they are going to aggressively pursue to be a leader in all things AI. And I think that that's the type of vision that investors want to hear. Obviously, they're going to have to prove that they can execute. But on all these fronts that you just mentioned, this is a company that's grown from simply, buying books to now think of all the different areas that they're leading in, and they're executing really well. You don't just go on Amazon and shop and expect a mediocre performance. You can, I have a friend who was just talking to me who just had a baby and said, I ordered some emergency items at 8:00 last night, and they were on my doorstep at 7:30 this morning. So from a logistics perspective, they've proven that they can execute and be very efficient at this execution. And I think advertising is another area. It's really smart and strategic that they're tackling live sports, because live sports commands an audience that's watching in real time, that ad spend is actually really relevant and targeted and meaningful. And so we see a lot of growth potential there. And it's nice to see whenever the metrics are all aligning alongside the company's vision. So while, yes, they are spending a lot, so far it seems like they're making very strategic investments on growth in the future.
Yep, and they used to punish the stock, as Kevin mentioned, whenever they spend and invest in their business. It has previously historically worked out pretty well. But you mentioned that advertising business. I think that's real key, because that's the biggest growth driver for this company. Now, Megan, going into earnings next Thursday with the stock at these elevated levels, just below all-time highs, up 2% today. I mean, how do you want to look at that? I mean, do you, with your data being mostly positive, you had that yellow light there, but at the same time, are you guys still positive on this company? Do you wait for pullbacks? What are you guys looking at as far as your data goes?
I just got a preview of our earnings sheet from Landon just before I came on the show. So I actually have an earnings score, and our earnings score for next week for Amazon right now is bullish. It's a positive 34. So for us, on a positive 100 to a negative 100, that is, I would say, cautiously bullish. But a lot of that is driven by where we see momentum and kind of the what we've learned from Meta, from Microsoft, and how the market has reacted to those reports, and then how we see Amazon performing comparatively. So we think because of the strength in e-commerce, the strength in the advertising growth potential, that could help push them over that very high bar that certainly exists.
Yeah, and definitely maybe buy dips if the stock does come up short and goes down. All right, great discussion, great data. Thanks, Megan. Have a great weekend.